How to run a small group accountability meeting. Community is the lifeblood of economy of one. How do you effectively run a meeting maintaining your small group? That's a critical question. Today we're going to talk about what the purpose of your small group is, how you run a typical meeting. We're going to deep dive into managing each color on the YBR and talk generally about what progress should look like. If you're a part of Economy of One, you've heard a lot about small groups. So just to quickly recap, your small group members are your financial first responders. These are people who we ask for a serious commitment from because these are people who spend a tremendous amount of time with you. It's very important that these people recognize that this group is intended for life. Why? These people go deep into understanding the story of you. They understand your skill set, they know your definition of success, they've built trust with you, and they've opened their relational network to you. These are people who are committed to also provide you objective perspective outside your family when you need someone to consult with. Everyone's success is linked. In a lot of ways, this is a lot like Weight Watchers. You are there to help one another and hold each other accountable to your goals. If you don't show up, this impacts everyone else in the group, and so it's critical that you not put up excuses and that you show up. A sample meeting agenda is available for you on page 84 of the Economy of One workbook. If you haven't bought a workbook, these are available on Amazon and are a great investment for the course. How do you run a meeting? Assuming you've completed Economy of One training, it's time for your first meeting as a small group. How are these meetings run? The group chooses a facilitator out of the participants who will communicate the date and time and determine that amongst the members. Then this person who is the facilitator facilitates the group. It's like a rotating role amongst members of the group so everyone gets a chance to practice. The facilitator needs to run the group meetings like a business meeting. It needs to run like clockwork, and punctuality counts. Job seekers, I have found, need to be reminded how to show up. So these meetings are practice, and you need to treat it like a job interview. If you wouldn't come late to a job interview, you don't come late to the meeting. The meetings are set for exactly 1 hour. It might go over an hour, but only after critical things are accomplished. Considering a 60-minute agenda, what does use of time look like? Well, the first 5 to 15 minutes, everyone gets on the call, social updates are provided, and major events are discussed amongst members of the group. At about the 15-minute mark, you need to ask the question, what have you learned so far in your approach to the white contacts? Who did you approach? What's working? What's generally not working, and why? And this is the discussion amongst the group. Did you meet your weekly outreach goals to start, nurture, and expand relationships? This is where some people will provide a lot of excuses, other people will talk about progress, but this is a place in the conversation where you can address accountability toward goals. If someone shows up meeting after meeting after meeting and talks about connecting with people but is not actually doing it, this is a chance for the group to discuss it. How about your YBR? We're going to be talking at a broad level about your score. What's a score on a YBR? A score on a YBR is how many new yellows, reds, and blues have been added to your YBR chart. So in my case, this week it might be I went to plus 10 whites or grays. These are people I'm prospecting with, and I'm asking the question, do you need what I have to offer? I am expanding relationships, creating relationships with whites and grays. So I have plus 10 whites, plus 3 yellows, plus 2 blues, minus 1 red. So that might be my report for the week, or plus 3 reds. What is your next step with every red, blue, and yellow? And you're discussing it in that order because your reds are most urgent to close. So quality time ought to be invested in discussing what your next steps are with the reds. Then you go to blues, then you go to yellows, and you're discussing what's moving on your yellow, blue, red spreadsheet, not every single thing on your spreadsheet if it's consistent from week to week. You also might be addressing any reds or yellows that are moving to what we call the parking lot. Let me discuss this briefly. The parking lot is where a contact goes that might, for some reason, become inert. They're not moving forward, they're not moving backward, they're waiting on a decision somewhere, and you're waiting with them before you move forward. So yellows can go to a parking lot. For whatever reason, they've cooled off, they're not ready to meet yet, they're not talking anymore because their budget was pulled. The reds can go to a parking lot. Blues never go to the parking lot. Why? Because blues are always moving forward or bouncing back to yellow, but they're never moved to the parking lot. So at the 15-minute mark, you're getting feedback from members about strengths, weaknesses, areas for growth or expansion of skills, and you're asking the question for any member who might need to pivot. You also, if that's kind of run through and everybody's talked about that, might role play as prospector, technical expert, and closer. At the conclusion of the meeting, stop and reflect on how far each of you have come, what you're learning, and end with encouragement. Each person in the group should say something that is noticeably improving about another member of the group. Rotate the role of facilitator as each of you needs practice in running a very tight and tightly scheduled meeting. Be sensitive to the quiet person in the group. With many people in a group, there are going to be people who dominate in terms of the discussion. If that's the case, you need to be sensitive to people who are quiet or maybe introverts. You need to offer them special time to talk, making sure that they cover also the details of their yellow, blue, red spreadsheet and talk about the things that might be holding them back. If they need personal support, if their self-esteem is suffering, if maybe they've come through a rough interview or a rough week, maybe they need prayer. If they could use prayer and that's not part of your belief system, please encourage them to get the community and prayer support via our national Thursday night meetings at 6:30 to 8 o'clock on the Economy of One Zoom call. It's offered if you go to economyofone.com and sign in at the bottom of our homepage for our newsletter. Those links will be sent to you. Let's dive in deeper for a moment to cover in detail the YBR and specific considerations for each color. For each person reporting, you just need to be able to talk about broad movement in your whites, yellows, blues, reds, and greens. Focus on reds first, your closing strategies, then blues, your next steps, important questions to further qualify a blue or what your gut reaction is telling you after multiple meetings, and then talk about new yellows. Timeline, how to further develop the relationship, or how to position your value or eliminate competition. Focus on existing reds. These are the most important thing to talk about at the weekly meeting. You need to ask the question, is this red moving forward toward a decision? Is it stalling out? Does it need to go to a parking lot? And with greens that have made a yes or no decision, what also is your callback date? For blues, just generally, you're qualifying them with the 8 questions, which include, have I protected my intellectual property in talking to this person and position my value? Do I know who the decision maker is? If I submit a proposal for them to review, do I have a timeline and a process for the review? Do I know their definition of price in relation to my definition of value? These are some of the 8 questions that you ask in relation to a blue. For yellows, am I asking how to build the relationship, how to further my value, and do I share that contact with anyone else in the group? In terms of a pipeline, there's always movement happening, always things that are happening, and you need to be showing demonstrable, clear progress every week. Your next steps need to be identified, and on your spreadsheet, it needs to be clear when action items are due. There needs to be a plan for every interaction as much as you can. At least mentally, you need to have an agenda for the meeting. You need to be asking the question, how am I doing at developing this relationship? Not just at presenting a resume or, talking shop. How am I actually doing at developing a relationship with this person? What kind of value am I adding, either personally or professionally? And then how am I positioning my value? The group should review the health of your YBR and should help troubleshoot when you feel stuck or you need fresh ideas or a critique. In conclusion, while this is a formal meeting, it's going to evolve into something more casual over time because deep friendships emerge. However, if the meeting gets sloppy, it can derail. So I encourage you always to try to keep it to the 1 hour mark. People are going to get out of this meeting the input that they prepare and go into it with. So if your charts aren't updated, if your callback dates are not updated, you're not going to get a lot out of this meeting. It is very important that you come to the meeting prepared. Prayer makes a huge difference. If you can or are open to that kind of support in this meeting, please pray for one another. If that's not in your belief system and you could use seeing what prayer looks like in action, come visit with us on Thursday nights from 6:30 to 8 o'clock Central Time to learn how to pray for each other. We just invite you to come explore this because as a person who helped create this program, I have seen huge differences amongst the groups that pray. Finally, are you benefiting? If you are benefiting from all of this free instruction on YouTube, please sign up for this channel. It sounds like a small thing, but your subscription to this channel means that the algorithm is seeing us and is increasingly giving us visibility. And that's how we're going to reach other people with a hopeful and change-oriented message. Join the Facebook Community Economy of One private group. This is Elizabeth Allen for the Economy of One channel. Thank you so much for your support.